Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I am your host, Brian Bosley, and today we have an amazing guest on, and I'm excited to introduce him to you. But before we do, I just want to give you today's analytics. As of this morning, our recording is January 31st, 2023. Now, these will be outdated by the time the podcast is streaming, but as of today, we are now being subscribed to on 6 continents, 43 countries, all 50 states, and 1,184 cities. So, as of yesterday, we were at 1,162, I believe. We picked up 16 new cities, subscribers in 16 new cities over the past 24 hours since the last podcast. So I want to thank all of you amazing guests, as well as the Bamboo Pack listeners and subscribers, for hitting that like button, for rating, reviewing us, and sharing with us with 3 of your loved ones. All right, today I want to read a heart letter. I'm going to have to shorten this one. I just got it this morning. And this heart letter came in regarding the Brooke Crable podcast that was actually aired this morning and started streaming this morning. And this Bamboo Pack subscriber said, "Good morning, Brian. I just finished listening to your episode of Brooke. I loved how upbeat she sounds. It's no wonder with her attitude why she is so successful." Then he wanted to talk about his mother was a single mother and how he was so impressed with how Brooke talked about being a single mother and the struggles, but she didn't get bogged down in it. She fought through it. And at the end, he said, "I don't know how you keep finding these incredible guests, but keep it up, brother." And I think he's going to be just as pleased with the guest we have on today. Well, today we have, before we do, I do want to dedicate this episode. I grew up with a young man, 54 years old today, but we grew up from kindergarten all the way through high school. He was a neighbor of mine, lived 2 houses down, and we did all kinds of stuff together. We built forts together. We went sledding together. We just had a good time. And then in high school, we got the opportunity to play on the same high school football team together. He was far superior to me. He was all state in the state of Michigan. And I found out yesterday that my friend Pat Lee has stage 4 cancer and is fighting. And knowing Pat, probably the physically strongest man I've ever met in my life. His nickname from the Detroit Press was Pat Caveman Lee. This one's for you, my friend. I know how strong you are inside and out. You're going to fight this demon. You're going to destroy this demon. And you've got a lot of people supporting you and loving you. And I'm one of them. And all the Bamboo Pack members are here cheering you on, praying for you, and sending you positive vibes. So keep up the good fight, my brother. We love you. All right. Today, we have a guest on that I've known now for approximately a year and a half. We have Anton Anderson. Anton is the CEO of Elite Resource Team, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But Anton he began his career in 2003 with Smith Barney while studying business in college, and he graduated from the University of California, Santa Barbara in the top 3% of his class. The man is wicked smart. That's all I can tell you. I've had a lot of opportunities to talk with him and never walk away the same person. In 2008, he co-founded SPL Financial, which grew into a thriving practice before selling it in 2014 to start Elite Resource Team, which now he's the CEO. Recognized as one of the top training companies for financial advisors and accountants, Elite Resource Team has thousands of clients across North America. He has developed a diverse career as an investor, advisor, and a CPA consultant. He is also a published author and has lived in the United States, Australia, and in the United Kingdom. He currently resides in San Diego with his amazing wife, Giselle, and their 3 children now, 4, 2, and 5 months. So how do you think I was able to pull this guy away from his busy schedule to come on here? I still don't know. Outside of work, Anton is an avid public speaker and is involved with numerous charitable organizations. But a really cool thing he does, and I see this on Facebook and social media all the time, is he's a competitive surfer. which is really cool. He's the first, well, maybe we've had another surfer on here, but he's definitely the first competitive surfer we've had on here. So without further ado, it's an honor for me to welcome, all the way from San Diego, California, Anton Anderson. Welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
What a pleasure. Thank you very much, Brian. I've been looking forward to this, listened to a number of your podcasts in the past, and I am excited for our conversation today. And you called me wicked smart, which I'm going to have to quote you on that. I like the wicked smart. Thank you for that.
I stole that from Good Will Hunting. The man's wicked smart.
Very good.
No, wicked man, smart. You are. You even look smart when you look at your pictures. I mean, you look smart, and you are smart.
My wife's listening to this recording right now going, I don't know, Brett. No, just kidding. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I appreciate that dedication as well that you did at the beginning. Prayers, love, positive vibes to your friend and the family, man. That's tough.
Thank you so much, Anton. He's a good man. He always has been. And we're going to see if we can do a little extra something for him on this podcast. So, all right. So, I know a little bit about you. We never really got to talk a lot personal. We probably talked a little more personal right before we started recording today than we ever have. But so can you share with myself and the Bamboo Pack subscribers out there, Anton, a little bit about yourself, your childhood, where you grew up, maybe who or what were some of your inspirations to help you become the man you are today?
Of course, happy to. So born and raised in a little suburb just north of San Diego area. So California boy, pretty much through and through. And dad was an elementary school teacher for most of the time growing up. Mom was a elementary school principal. So a lot of educators in the family, as well as grandparents and aunts and uncles, all that good stuff. Mom and pops were really phenomenal parents. Now that I'm a parent, I have better appreciation of just how incredible they were. And somewhere through the early days, I kind of got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. And even though most of the family was more government employees, I took a liking to just seeing what you can do, coming up with a creative idea and seeing if it had legs and trying to sell friends and family into it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And I think in early 2000s, now probably when I was somewhere in young high school, so let's say it was 98, my grandfather started telling me a little bit more about these gifts that he had been getting me for a number of years, which was basically Vanguard stock. That was like Christmas and birthday gifts. And for some reason, I kind of took an interest in it. So I started studying more what it meant to be, investing in the market. And that led to real estate, and that led to other types of business and so forth. So as a high school boy, I, for some reason, thought I wanted to be a stockbroker. That was the path that I wanted to go down. And in college, my parents gave me the gift of allowing me the opportunity to pay for my way through college, or at least the majority of my way. And so I worked either part-time or full-time through college. And I think the first job outside of the In-N-Out Burger or, working at a hotel as customer service was at Smith Barney. Okay. So that was while I was still in college, and I worked part-time at Smith Barney. And that's kind of where I got my official intro into the, finance space. And to really make a long story short here, hopefully, I realized very quickly that the wirehouse environment wasn't exactly for me. So I had a good week as one of the early interns, and to celebrate, they allowed me to spend 5 minutes with the big dog in the office, and I could ask the big dog any question I wanted. And my question to him was, so again, this is me, 19 years old, parents are in elementary education. My dad was an Eagle Scout, by the way. And my question to the big dog was, if you could name one key for your success, what would it be? And he kind of looked at me like he had never been asked that question. He sat back. He said, you seem like a bright enough kid. I'll tell you, every morning when I get to this office, I leave all my morals and values on the elevator. Ooh. And I was like waiting for him to laugh and be like, oh, just kidding. But that was literally his answer. And this would have been 2002 probably by this time. And I just thought, oh my goodness, this is not the environment or the industry for me. So I didn't last there all that long, and went to a smaller boutique firm here in San Diego where I got to meet some, real good people doing good planning, and introduced to this concept of advanced planning for the virtual well, at the time it was just the family office space, which is really more of kind of the high-end planning, more affluent clients. And that's kind of what led me to ultimately starting Elite Resource Team. It was really this concept that was built around teaming up with other professionals to create more of a holistic and proactive kind of advice package for clients. So that's a little bit of the background of, where I came from, what the family environment was like, the early days in the finance space, and ultimately what led to starting Elite Resource Team in 2014.
That's amazing. I'm still going back to I leave all my morals and values in the elevator. You think about that, Anton, that was a pretty substantial gift he gave you at that point. He could have said, something very cookie cutter, something very benign.
Work hard.
Yeah, where you might have stayed in the industry.
The first one in and the last one out. Yeah, he could have said something like that. Yeah. That's true.
And he was very brutally honest, and to his credit, he may not have meant that to be. That might have not been his motivation, but it turns you into a path that has obviously been very successful, and you've helped a lot of people in your path that you may not have done that if you stayed with Smith with the brokerage firm at that time. So
it's a very good point, Brian. Wow. Yeah, absolutely, man. I remember thinking at the time, because I just watched, Glengarry Glen Ross and Broiler Room and Wall Street, and it was like, whoa, this is a line from that movie. It's like this is the industry, but. To your point, it was not the industry as a whole. It was this individual. And I guess you have a good point. His honesty kind of helped guide me towards an environment that was more fitting.
It did. I mean, he did. Did he give you the first place Cadillac, second place set of steak knives, third place he fired?
No, but he did walk in one day. He said, "I'm selling my car. You want it?" And he tosses the keys on the table, kind of like straight out of Broiler Room type of scene. And he goes, "Oh, never mind. It's a Porsche. You probably drive a used Honda Civic," and kind of laughed, and walked out. And the funny thing was, I was driving at that time. It was like 10 or 11-year-old 2-door Honda Civic that I bought for my little sister. And I was like, how does this guy know?
It's so stereotypical, man. That's great. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That will not be the title of today's podcast. I leave my morals and values in the elevator.
Yeah.
Well,
so something better.
So growing up, was there a specific person or group of people or a book or some experience that really inspired you, Anton?
Yes. I mean, there were a number. I had a really strong family unit, and I remember thinking growing up that I was, close to my parents and looked up to both of them, and lucky to have grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. But as I've gotten older, I've realized more and more, there's something special between a father and a son. And my dad was just a I'm still close to him to this day. I mean, a phenomenal human being, just a really good man. And then I was really lucky to have him as I was growing up. And when I was 19, I was introduced actually through my mom, who's also incredible, to an individual whose name was Alan Newman, who quickly became kind of my business mentor. So I had this unique relationship with my dad where I looked up to him a lot, and more life lessons. And then this individual named Alan, who, really kind of just inspiring story, dropped out of high school, ran away from a young age, ultimately built himself up to have multiple companies, and just a truly phenomenal kind of American success story. And I learned a whole different set of life lessons, more so to do with business and finance and mindset and just kind of like aspirations from Alan. And he passed away a number of years ago now, but there's not many decisions today that I face that I don't feel like are impacted by those voices, growing up.
That's so powerful. It's so interesting, Anton, and I think the Bamboo Pack are probably seeing this trend. When I started interviewing guests several months ago, I really noticed a pattern for a while that so many of the guests who are now gone on to successful endeavors in life grew up in a really troubled family. And I started thinking, is that because I've got an opportunity, as you have in our careers, to speak to a lot of people and get to know a lot of people who have been successful and who are successful. And I never really paid attention because I never really dug into their family life. But with the guests on here, that was a trend for a while. And I started asking myself, I wonder if that's a pattern. And then what I've noticed over the past 2 to 3 months is all of these amazing people like yourself that are coming on had these amazing amazing childhoods with amazing parents and grandparents and, love and nurturing. And I really look at it and say, no, there is no pattern there. It's what we make of everything we have. But now I know why you're wicked smart is because your mom and dad and grandmas and grandpas are all academics. So there you go. That helps a lot. No, I'm just kidding. You probably had that in you either way. So strong family unit, mom and dad. You had a special bond, or still do, with your father. And then this Alan Newman you were introduced when you were 19 years old really kind of gave you these other life lessons into to the next level that you still reflect back on when you make decisions today. I mean, that's a toolbox and it's you're so blessed to have your father still with you. You can call him and talk to him and ask him advice and get his, I'm sure, highly respected counsel on certain things. That's such a blessing.
Yeah, very much. And especially in the last few years, I mean, being married with kids, your parents play a different role. And Alan, if he was still here, no question, I would be in constant communication, but more so around probably business and leadership and, mindset. So, he was the one that I credit kind of introducing me to a lot of the Stephen Covey 7 Habits and just the pivotal point where a young man is making career decisions about essentially whether or not to listen to your own voice and go out and try to build something or, just settle. Yeah. So I think your observations are pretty spot on, Brian.
That's awesome. Well, that's so great. Well, this is a shout out to your mom and dad for raising such an amazing man. So, and for Mr. Newman,
appreciate
rest in peace, Mr. Newman, for helping Anton become the man he is and still guiding him from afar. So, we've gone through a lot of changes. Of course, you and I were working together right probably in the middle of or right near the tail end of the pandemic and the COVID and the quarantines. I think things were opening up again. But during that time, Anton, what do you think has been your greatest learning, or even over the past 2 to 3 years? What has been a great learning for you?
So I'm going to stick on the theme of business for a moment on that question, just because the one that comes to mind is really summed up by the word collaboration. And I thought of this when you and I were talking before the podcast. You talked about the fact that your podcast was doing well, but it really went to new levels when you started bringing guests on and interviewing and working with guests. I've seen a similar trend in our company, even from when we started it in 2014. I mean, we intentionally used the word team in the company name, Elite Resource Team, because it was really meant to be about teamwork. But the collaboration has gone to a whole new level in the last few years. And I don't think it's just our company or even our industry. I'm sensing that it's a theme or a shift that's taking place across all industries. And that's probably been the biggest lesson for me, is to really just take my thinking to a new level on how powerful collaboration and teamwork is, and just how important it is to find really good people and surround yourself with them. And there's a book that you're probably familiar with, Brian, called Who Not How. And I think it's a simple summary of that concept, which is we basically have been trained through academics and through career licenses that we need to learn things ourselves, right? We need to study. We need to pass the exam individually. We need to get the license. But life is not a one-on-one game. It's not single basketball or singles tennis or something. Life is a team sport. And the more I look around at people that have built things that I think are meaningful, what they've done is they've really figured out how to collaborate with other professionals and then work together to create something much bigger than themselves. So that, to me, is probably the biggest lesson and also the most exciting thing that I'm seeing moving forward. I mean, our company is all about, or our training and our community, everything is all about taking who traditionally are very individualistic, competitive professionals, financial advisors, insurance agents, CPAs, attorneys, they tend to see themselves as competing with one another. And what we try to do is flip that script on its head and say, actually, if we can all recognize that we have some of the solution, but not all, and we can come together and collaborate with one another to offer something much better to the marketplace, we actually all end up winning. And the opportunity is 100 times bigger than we think it is when we're stuck in this like competitive mindset. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's really been my main lesson over the last 3 years. And I'm just trying to run with it and kind of see, like, is there a ceiling to that concept of collaboration? How far can we push it?
I think that's an incredibly insightful answer, and not what I expected. But when I really look back on what I've noticed with my clients and even my experience here with the podcast over the past, 13 months, I'm seeing that across the board. And a question for you, how do you think, when you look at, we had the quarantines, we had, lockdown, shutdowns, people working remotely, where you think that would almost create isolation, it would create silos of individuals, but yet it had the opposite effect. It brought people together to work in teams. Any theory on why that happened, really in an antithetical way that I would have guessed it would have happened? I thought it would pull people apart, but in many ways it brought people together.
I certainly am no expert on this. I have read a little bit and I've put a little bit of thought into it myself. And I just keep coming back to the idea or the premise that we are social beings. Like, human beings need other people, whether it's a tribe or it's a family unit. One of the worst things that you can do is put people in either, prison or work camps where it's isolation, right? They have no interaction with other human beings. And so I think COVID kind of pushed that pendulum a little bit further than everybody realized they were comfortable. If we go deep down into like our needs, right? We talk about the need to belong to something. And so I think that's what we're seeing maybe is the pendulum is swinging back now that just we're adjusting to a more normalized life not really post-COVID, but you know what I mean? We're accepting that there's certain hangovers of COVID, but we're trying to figure out what it looks like. And more, I think people are recognizing, hey, that didn't feel good. And actually, when we come together, we're happier. We create better work. We make more beautiful music. Like, that's what kind of society is.
I think that's so powerful. I have not read Dan Sullivan's book. It's been on my Amazon cart, so I have it pulled up here now, so I can hit the button when we're done. I'm going to order it. I've got 6 books in the batter's box right now, getting ready on deck for me to read over the next couple of weeks. So that'll be probably number 7. But I just pulled a quote up from his book, and it said, if you're going to apply higher levels of teamwork in your life, you'll need to relinquish control over how things get done. And I want to speak to the Bamboo Pack listeners for just a minute here, because so many of you and so many of all of us have suffered, mental illnesses, or our mental condition has decreased because we're, isolated for so long. And a lot of people still have that hangover coming right now in their lives. And many of you, maybe not, but you're going through something. And I say this every episode. We go through 3 crises on average a year and multiple emergencies sprinkled in between those. And we struggle a lot. And if you feel like you're struggling right now, a lot of times we tend to isolate ourselves. That's traditionally my approach, is I tend to isolate myself and become somewhat of a recluse. I've been doing that lately, but it's more on just proactively. I want to be a recluse right now because I've got a lot of things I'm working on. But sometimes when I've had those issues of loneliness or sadness, or sometimes mild cases of depression, I've tended to kind of go into a shell. And a lot of us do that. So if you're out there right now and you feel that you're going through something, whatever it might be, it could be something small, average, or large, macro or micro, pull in somebody, call someone, talk with somebody, somebody you can trust, somebody who trusts you, somebody you respect and respects you, somebody who can celebrate with you, who can support you, and who can challenge you a little bit. And that's really what I think draws a lot of people, Anton, to this podcast, is because they feel a connection, a community, the Bamboo Pack do, with each other, as well as to the guests like you that we bring on, and they're learning something from you, saying, wow, that helps me. And I don't even know this guy from San Diego, but all the way across the country, he said something that I can use and I can benefit from. And there's that kinship there. And I really think that collaboration is incredibly powerful. I can tell you right now, and I've never announced this on the podcast before, I don't think, the title of today's podcast is going to be Life as a Team Sport. I think that's I love it. I mean, it's perfect. I always have to look for your quotes, the quotes of the guests afterward. And I find, is that a good title, or do I have to, maybe this one, or I mold one together? This one's found locked in. So I love that. And I really like what you said, because I've noticed that I just haven't intellectualized that. What I've noticed is this collaboration, teamwork across the board with my clients in multiple industries. Primarily my clients revolve around the financial industry or on the fringe of it. But I never thought why that's happening. And I think you're right. I think the pendulum pushed us away to this point where, we were so isolated, and we are social beings. We're designed to be part of something greater than ourselves. And so the pendulum now is swinging back the other way. And I think it's really powerful. And I hope it stays that way. I really do.
Likewise.
Because you look at, I read a book years ago, Anton, called it was called The Cure for Depression. And I just found it fascinating. This author, I don't know what his title was. He was a doctor of some type. And he talked about how 150 years ago, there was no depression. Okay. And today there's a lot. But the argument right away, the counter argument is, well, they didn't diagnose it for depression back then. And he said, yeah, that's a great argument. So what they did is they went to these Aboriginal tribes, New Zealand and all these different parts of the world. And they sat with them, they studied them, they spent time with them. There was no signs of depression. So what they found is, what's the difference in today's society versus 150 years ago, and all these, what we'd call primal tribes that really are very advanced in ways that are more important sometimes than what we are. And he found that there were 6 elements: exercise, certain diet, but one of them was they had a tribe. They spent time in a community. Other parents helped raise children. They looked after each other. They spent time together. And he said that was one of the key elements that they noticed that was so relevant back, 150 years ago in these small villages, as well as it is today in these more Aboriginal tribes around the world. So I think you're onto something very solid there. And I think, like you said, I would ride that collaboration wave, because I hope it's here to stay.
Yeah. Well said. Good stuff.
I've got a question for you. Now, this is the question a lot of the Bamboo Pack listeners love to hear, because it really connects. But I always tell the guests, you can say I pass on this question. But the question is, Anton, what is the most difficult thing that you feel you've ever gone through in your life? And then what did you do to scale that wall and overcome it?
Good question. So I'll go back a few years, and my wife and I had just had our first little boy, and we were kind of entering the phase of, being open to a second. And she went into the emergency room because they were worried she was having either a panic attack or a stroke. And they came out and said, no stroke, everything looks good, but how long have you had that lump on your thyroid? And she said, huh? What are you talking about? So I'm sure it's nothing, but you probably want to get it diagnosed. So we do. We go in, and the first one, results come back, and it's benign, or not benign. It's undecided. So they're like, you could just wait for a while. My wife, for anybody that ever meets her and knows her, she's not one to just sit on things like that and wait. So she goes back in for a second. Same thing, undecided. Third results come back, and I'm actually at work at the time, and this is, month and a half into this, and she calls, and I'm in the middle of a company meeting, and so I take it, and she can't even get the words out of her. I know what it is. So I get up from the conference room, and I run home, and she's crying at home. We have our little baby, probably less than a year, at home with her, and she says, the doctor's called and it's cancer. So when you hear that from your partner, it's almost one of those like, what do you even do or say, right? Apart from just put your arms around him. And so we schedule surgery to get this removed. And when we're actually at the hospital, like she's in gown, Brian, she's 20 minutes away from being wheeled in. And one of the things they do on all females under the age of, I think, 50 in California, before you go in for major surgery, is they do a pregnancy exam. And so lo and behold, back in walks the nurse and says, well, you're pregnant. And so now within like a 2-3 month period, I mean, our life has gone from my wife has cancer to she's pregnant now with our second and has cancer. And I just remember, and obviously they canceled the surgery. They said it's too risky to do right now. And, you need to consider your options here. I just remember driving home and she says, what a bizarre feeling. At the same time, inside my body, I'm growing something that I'm so scared of, and I'm growing something that's so beautiful. And I just thought, oh my word, what a twist of life. So we go in to get a sonogram with a doctor at the hospital nearby, and everything's kind of going as planned. And it's, apart from the cancer, it's kind of this beautiful, we're pregnant, we're looking at our baby. And then the nurse goes a little quiet. She says, if you don't mind, I'm just going to step out of the room. And about 2 minutes later, another doctor comes in, and his name's Dr. Danishman, who I will always remember. And this ironically ties back to the collaboration kind of realization I had. But Dr. Danishman is a high-risk pregnancy specialist. Okay. And so he says, do you mind if I take a look? And she says, of course. And so he does. And then he says, if you would be okay with it, I'd like you to come into my office. So obviously we know something's up now, and we follow him into the office. We sit down. He says, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure your baby has some pretty significant heart disorders. And he turns out to be right. We do a series of kind of tests after the fact, and it is a female baby. She has a couple holes in her heart. She has narrowing of the great artery, and then she has what's called transposition of the great arteries, which means what typically would lead clean blood into the heart is actually leading essentially dirty blood, and the other, what should be leading oxygen, is actually leading blood. So it's the blood is not cleaning. So ultimately, if the baby was born under these circumstances, the baby would die within 3 or 4 minutes from suffocation because the oxygen's not circulating the body. So Dr. Danishman's incredible. He says, you know what? If you were my kids, I would tell you, you need to take some time to think about this. You have two options. Obviously, you can end the pregnancy and you can move forward on the cancer treatment, or you can go forward with the pregnancy and you're going to have to wait on the cancer treatment. And if you move forward with the pregnancy, you have a baby with a significant heart disorder that's going to need open heart surgery, like within days of being born. And so we think about it, we come back, we tell them we'd like to stay and move forward with the pregnancy. Obviously my wife's a complete trooper for just handling all of this. So he says, well, in that case, what I strongly suggest you do is move up to Los Angeles. It's about 2 hours from San Diego, no traffic. He said, you're going to want to meet with an individual by the name of Dr. Starnes, who's probably the best in the country at heart surgeries, cardiothoracic surgeon. And he said, you're going to want to be up there for probably a 5-week period, because you're going to want to be there at least a week before the baby's due in case she goes into early labor. And then your baby's going to need open heart surgery within days of being born. She'll be essentially right when your wife delivers, she'll be rushed onto a breathing machine, and you essentially won't see your baby awake until after the heart surgery, and then she'll need to spend about a month in the cardiac NICU. So that's what we do. We move up to LA. My parents went up there. Giselle's sister and brother-in-law went up there with us. We got 2 Airbnbs. We packed up our 3 dogs and our 1-year-old and went up to LA. I ran the company, pretty much remotely through that time. And I've got some great team members that were, massive help with that. But the baby, Aubrielle was her name. She was born. And within a few days of being born, they wheeled her back. My wife and I, said our prayers and gave her kisses. And they performed open heart surgery. And we sat and waited, and probably the longest couple hours of my life. Doctor walked in, and I could tell the look on his face, it was positive. And he said, she did amazing. So we got to walk in and see our little 3-4-day-old baby with, you can't even imagine what a child that age looks like unless you've been through it, but it was incredible. It was a phenomenal surgery and team. And so she spent about 3.5 weeks after that in the cardiac NICU, just kind of being, brought back to health. And to this point, she's 2.5 years old, has some beautiful scars on her chest and through her, stomach and so forth, a very raspy voice from some vocal cord damage that was caused during that time period, but she's alive. And then so we got home from LA, and then, pretty quickly after that, my wife went in to get the cancer removed. She actually did have one surgery while she was pregnant, and that had some of the cancer removed, but not all. She got the second cancer surgery relatively quickly when we got home, followed up by some radioactive iodine treatment. And, she still goes in for check-ins and everything. So it's relatively new, but at this point she's in a really good place health-wise. And, I think they, say they're not seeing any signs of cancer in the body at this point. So, that experience was just, I feel like, 1 to 2 years of living on adrenaline with a chronic level of stress, with a little baby and my wife both going through significant medical challenges.
I got to tell you, Anton, you know how to pull a cliffhanger story. I sat here, I'm waiting to write the next words in my notes, and I'm thinking, okay, come on, please, pull through. And as soon as you said, and now she's got these healthy scars, I couldn't help but clap. I'm so, what is your little girl's name?
Aubrielle.
Okay, so I just want to take a minute here to ask the Bamboo Pack members out there to take a moment, and whether you believe in prayer, positive vibes, energy, frequency, whatever you might believe in, send some amazing, amazing things to both Giselle and Aubrielle in California, and keep them in your thoughts and your prayers, and keep them healing and getting stronger and stronger by the day. It sounds like everything is looking great, and let's pull a few more 100,000 people to send some great things out toward both of them and the entire Anderson family, because that was a full range of emotions right there. I'm so happy that I see Giselle on Facebook, so I knew she's doing well. And I just, when you were talking about Aubrielle, I just wanted to make sure. I'm like, okay, I didn't know her name, so I'm really happy that everything's working out for you, Anton. That's a beautiful story, and I just can't imagine, I can't fathom the ups and downs and the challenges and the stress and the emotional range you both went through during that time frame. It's mind-boggling. I did not know that, and I commend all five of you in the Anderson family for being so damn amazing. That's wow.
I appreciate it, Brian.
Wow.
And it's interesting as you're saying that, and I'm just kind of like going back and living through some of that time and looking at it honestly now. It's like it's as hard as it is to tell that story. People that have been through scenarios will appreciate it's not like that chapter closes and then there's no more ramifications on life after that. And that's probably been, going back to your original question of what's one of the hardest things I've been through. I mean, that time was the hardest in terms of like, am I going to lose someone I love?
Sure.
And how are we going to make it through this? And very challenging from like a macro life perspective. And now we're still navigating through just processing, some of that PTSD and the scares and how that affected us. And I mean, ironically, it was during COVID, so we're in the hospital wearing masks. Only one parent at a time can be with the baby. And my wife's having cancer surgery wearing a mask. Like there's just so much that's gone through. It's daily where we are still having conversations and trying to handle it in the healthiest way we can, but it's not easy. These things aren't like the movie where it ends happily ever after and then the movie's over. It's like, this is real life, and we're still working through it every day, man.
I can imagine. It leaves a trail of breadcrumbs behind you that you still continue to process. I'm sure a great deal of PTSD going through that time. And yeah, you're right. It was during COVID too. That's wow. Well, it takes a very strong marriage and a very strong family to be able to do that, and to have such a healthy perspective on it afterward, where I think a lot of people would just say, okay, everything's done, let's move on. And in reality, you might hide that internal pain or those internal emotions and that PTSD and bury it because you just went through this traumatic event for such a long period of time. You might just think, okay, let's move on. And all of a sudden, years later, that comes up and creeps up on you. So it's really healthy that you're processing that as you guys continue navigating this journey, this post-trauma journey. I think that seems very healthy. Wow. And then since then, you brought on another little 5-month-old.
Yep.
It's funny because I was going to tell the Bamboo Pack when we got on here today, I thought Anton had 2 kids. And I watch him on Facebook all the time. He pops up all the time. And I watch his journey. But, sometimes when you don't talk with a person a lot, you just see snapshots of their life. You don't see the video of their daily life. You see children, sure, and you think they're the same children. Sure. But I thought he had recently they had another child. So I almost read the bio with 2 children, but I'm glad he corrected me. And I thought, okay, now I'm not going crazy. I thought there was a little baby involved recently. So. Well, I want to thank you, Anton, for sharing that. I know sometimes that can be a challenge to bring up, those difficult moments in life, and especially when it involves not just yourself, but 2 other ones. Really, at the time, your son too, who was now is 4, but he was just a baby at the time. So it involved a lot of people that were in stress and in trauma and a lot of concern about what the future holds. So thank you for bringing that up and being able to be so vulnerable and transparent. That those kind of stories help so much more than you possibly can imagine when other people are going through similar things. I know. So, all right, I'm going to move on to the next question here. That was powerful. Right now, Anton, as you are continuing to grow in life, your family's growing, your business is growing, your endeavors are growing. You're that kind of guy that's always looking for, the next level to shoot for, to serve your clients and your family and the world. What's a win for you? What would you consider a victory?
That's a good question. Given the chapter of life I'm in, it definitely would have been different, 4 or 5 years ago. So what's a win for me? There's a story that I like that talks about the knights with King Arthur. And the general idea is like the knights and King Arthur had this vision of a holy grail. You might be familiar with this, Brian. Mm-hmm. But so they set off in search for it, and they come up to this forest. And the idea is that each knight gets off the horse and is to approach the forest where it seems the darkest to them as an individual. And I love that concept, which is like we're each looking for our own holy grail in a way, and we're each having to face or should face the forest where it appears the darkest to us, which means go into the space that you're wrestling with. Like that's different for you. It's different for me. It's different for anybody listening right now, right? So a win for me at this point in my life is feeling the fear, but still moving into the forest where it appears the darkest and not necessarily knowing what's on the other side. And that is, I think, what drives a lot of my maybe motivation or momentum. I mean, even this podcast, Brian, my wife was asking me this morning, she said, this is kind of different than the podcast you've been on in the past, which is all about elite resource team and CPAs and advisors. This is a little bit more personal in nature. I said, yeah. She said, how are you going to prepare for it? I said, I'm just going to be present and see where it goes. So I think that's how I would answer the question. Is a win for me is just is looking at the dark corners of my life and exploring them with courage.
Wow. Damn, that's a pretty deep answer. I love it. I love it. I hear a lot of answers that are more, when my children smile, which they're all solid answers. I just love, this is what I said when I got on. I'm like, this guy's going to have, I thought to myself, he's going to have some really good stuff, or he's going to have some really bad stuff. I don't know, but it won't be average. It won't be average. I know that.
Yeah, maybe a bit of both. Yeah.
No, this is good. I read a book, and I think it was, finished a book about 2 weeks ago called The Everyday Hero Manifesto by Robin Sharma. And now I'm going through some advanced courses I have for the last 2 months of his and with him. And then I'm listening to the book again on Audible. But I also read a book called The Untethered Soul, which both, fantastic books. As long as another book by Brooke Crable, who was a guest on the podcast, called Uncaged. 3 books I've read in the last 3 weeks that are just amazing. But one of and I don't remember which book it was, but they talked about run toward your monsters. And they gave an example of this kind of a shaman, I guess, or a wise leader was in the mountains, and he had these followers going with him in the mountains, and they came across these gates, and they opened the gates, and these 2 amazingly powerful, almost rabid dogs came running after them. And they were like 150 yards away. And all these followers of the shamanic leader took off running in fear and screaming for their lives, where the leader started running toward the dogs. And the dogs saw the leader coming, and they got more angry, and they ran faster. And so the leader started smiling and putting his arms up and laughing and running even faster to the dogs. And it kept going on until they got fairly close. And the dogs saw this leader was actually coming at them with a smile and laughter, and was gaining speed with every step he took. And so they turned and they ran away. And the lesson is, we don't run from the demons. We don't run from the dragons, from the fears. We run toward them. When we run, they're like a predatory animal. They chase us. When you run toward them, they run away. They lose their power over us. I'm not going to tell anybody to go run toward a grizzly bear or a wolf or anything, but in theory, when we run toward the fears we have, we run away, they chase. We run toward, they collapse or they lose their power. So I think that's extremely powerful. I've always liked the story, Anton, of when during a storm, cows will run away from the cloud front, the storm front, or a bison or buffalo run toward it. So they get the storm sooner, but they run through it. Where the storm finally catches up, and the cows keep running away from it, and the storm just stays with them for much, much longer. And it's like, I always tell myself, be the buffalo, be the bison, run toward the storm. And I've had this thing lately, and I'm pretty open on my podcast, and I've had this thing. I've been spending a lot of time alone over the last 5 months, Anton, and I'll tell you, the first 2 months were really dark. Not dark where I was thinking of suicide, none of that kind of dark, but just very deep loneliness. And I started, and I started thinking, okay, this theory about the idea about the buffalo and the cows, and I thought, man, embrace this time. Embrace the time that you have. You're an empty nester. You get to see your children and your grandson and your mother, and you get to talk quite often. You get to talk on the phone with loved ones and good friends. You get to spend time working out and hiking and reading and podcasting and talking to clients and researching. And, I'm like, wow. This is an amazing gift. Now, yeah, do I still get lonely at times? Oh, yeah. But I've really embraced this idea of being alone, and I've gotten closer to my 12-and-a-half-year-old 12-pound dog who annoys the hell out of me most of the time. But now we're getting closer and closer, and I really relish the moments of getting up I get up at 4:45 now. I get up, I start my day. At night I'm usually in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock. I have a routine through the day, and it's really interesting. And it's what you just said. You feeling the fear, but still moving toward the darkest forest. That darkest part of the forest. And I think that's an incredible win. So thank you for sharing that, man.
Oh, my pleasure, man.
All right, we got another question. I love this question. It's probably my favorite question. So you and I are going to jump on a time machine right now, and we're going to go back to that. I'm going to go back to that moment. That broker just told you his secret to success is leave all your morals and values in the elevator. Now we're going to fly back in time, and you're going to talk to that young Anton Anderson, and you're going to tell him recipe for success, or you're going to give him some wise counsel. What would you say to that young version of yourself at that time?
Wow. So what would I have been, 1920? That's interesting. As soon as you ask it, there's two thoughts that come to mind. I don't know that they're contradicting, but they're not. I don't necessarily see the correlation between them at this initially either. So I'll just kind of run through them. On one hand, I would say just keep getting in the game and don't worry about the sweat and the blood and the tears. Stay in the game, right? I mean, it's that whole kind of man in the arena.
Oh,
just, you're going to have wins, you're going to have losses, but it's much better to know the highs and the lows than to never experience either. So don't hide. Don't hide. The other side of that would be raise my standards. I think I would have benefited from somebody telling me, and I don't know that I could really appreciate or listen to what that actually meant. But just when I look back on 20 years, I mean, I would have been 20 when I was at Smith Barney, I think that would have been my age. So I would have said probably just be a little more patient, raise your standards, and only play on a team where all of the other players have the same level of commitment and passion and drive as you do. Okay. I think I was a little quick. See, and this is kind of the contradictory part. I think I was a little quick to actually jump in the arena too many times, whereas maybe I would have benefited from a little bit of observing and being a little more strategic with who I aligned myself with earlier.
Okay, I'm going to stop right now. I'm going to talk directly to the bamboo pack because I want to capture what Anton just said there. And if you don't know what he's referring to, the man in the arena, it was a speech by, I believe, Theodore Roosevelt. It's not called the man in the arena. The speech was actually called something else. But if you Google man in the arena,
citizenship is a republic, or something along those lines.
I think that's it. And it is so powerful. And I've had several successful guests like Anton quote that. And I wanted to frame that and put it in my space at one point. I still do. I'm going to get it someday. But just think about this. So for you, Bamboo Pack member out there, you're going through right now. You're contemplating life. Maybe you're stuck on the hamster wheel and you're spinning around a little bit. You're finding your place in the circle. You're a little confused. You're a little disjointed in some way. So here's some great advice. Just keep getting in the game. Don't worry about the blood, sweat, and tears. You're going to find and realize the lows and the highs, but that is far better than never having been in the arena. Don't hide. Raise your standards, be patient, and play on a team with members who have the same drive and passion as you do, and integrity. So think about that. That right there, those 3 points that I made them into 3 points, but that little 52 seconds or whatever Anton was speaking can change your life. Print that off and think about it. Stay in the game. Raise your standards and be patient and be on a team, play on a team, surround yourself with people who have the same standards, passions, integrity as you do. Wow. Love it. Thank you so much. Okay, for a man of vision, and I always tell myself, and I share this a lot, I believe there are 3 types of people in the world, Anton. I believe there are visionaries, and there are pipe dreamers who just talk the big game but never do it. And then there are apologists who I believe take up the majority of the planet, where people, they just kind of go through life. They're amazing people, but they just haven't found their place in the circle. They're kind of almost apologizing for taking up space in the world. They're on that hamster wheel of life. I definitely consider you a visionary. So as a visionary, what's next for you? What's your next move in life?
So it's twofold, Brian. I mean, on one hand, I should openly with you maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, just there's still a lot of ramifications of the last few years that, I'm trying to continue to work through in a very honest and open way, and almost kind of find footing again from that to make sure that the skyscraper that's being built isn't being built on a shaky foundation.
Okay.
So that's part of my focus, and balancing that with, I think, just a never ending drive to explore what's next and what can be built and what if I did this. So I'm intentionally at this point, with 3 little kids and a wife, trying to be, somewhat strategic with how loose I let the leash on my ambitions, and mirror that with just making sure I don't let opportunities kind of pass me by. So, and that's kind of a day by day decision, really, on what that actually looks like and how it translates into what's next.
Okay. And so the drive to explore what's next, along with this navigating, openly and honestly, kind of what you've gone through over the past few years, finding that footing, making sure your skyscraper is built on a solid foundation and not sand. I mean, that's a pretty good balance, I would say, if for lack of a better word to use. It's a really good balance of, we're focusing on the here and the now and that next step for us as a family and myself, as well as I'm looking out in the future to see what's next that I can create, explore, and build. Whew. Well, I'm going to share. We haven't talked about Elite Resource Team, so I'm going to definitely have a link to their website on the bottom of this podcast, the text version of the podcast. So please, Bamboo Pack members, I know there are a lot of financial advisors out there who follow, subscribe, and listen each week. I don't know how many accountants there are. I don't know, but I just know by the comments that I get, and I see the titles of the people who send heart letters in. There are a lot of people in the financial industry. I can honestly attest, having worked with Elite a year or so ago, they offer a service that I tried to offer to my clients for years. A decade ago, or for probably 10 years, I stopped about a decade ago. And I could not find this collaboration between accountants and advisors. I couldn't find the secret code. There was a secret sauce. There was a silver bullet. I could not figure it out. And I struggled, but these guys have an incredible program. And I've said that from the day I met them and as we were working together, and I've shared that with a lot of advisors. So please, if you're in the financial arena, please click on the link below, or even if you're not, click on the link below. Everybody knows somebody who's a CPA, an accountant, or an advisor. Click on the link below. Share it, please, with other people. Have yourself, if you're in the industry or if not, have other people explore what they offer, because they are an incredible group of people, for one thing. They are probably one of the best groups of people I've ever worked with for just professionalism, intelligence, just service-oriented organization. And as Anton said, they're all about collaboration and teamwork. So please click on the link below, explore, check them out, reach out to them, and maybe have a conversation with one of the team members. All right, Anton, my final question is kind of the net question that catches anything I might have missed. Is there any question that I didn't ask that you wish I would have, or is there any final message you'd like to leave with the Bamboo Pack members?
Nothing initially comes to mind. I think that the tail end of that conversation was a really good one. And it is interesting to me that you mentioned that other guests have referenced that citizenship is a republic. I think there's something to that. And I know that I would just encourage people that are listening to spend a few minutes and kind of look at that, and then think about how it affects life, especially in the last few years with COVID. And I think more and more it makes me sad when people are on the sidelines. I think the more we look at where we're at and say, okay, yes, I see the fear, but I want to get in the game. I might get hurt, but at least I know the highs of pursuing, of being involved. It might turn out where we win. It might turn out where we lose, but at least we were in the game.
Okay, everybody, that's probably the best way maybe the best ending to any one of the 71 or 72 podcasts we've done in the past 13 months. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include the speech that President Roosevelt gave in the text of today's podcast. So it'll give you a quick, be able to just read it. Go below the podcast, look at the text version, the words we write about our amazing guests, and you'll see it there. I'll also include a link to the quote itself if you want to click on it and save it in your file somewhere. So that was amazing. Anton, you didn't fail to impress. You didn't surprise me. Like I said, I didn't know which direction we were going to go. It was either going to be really, really good or really, really bad, or it was not going to be normal or average. And you definitely you were definitely the former. There's no doubt about it. I've got a full page of notes, and I had to write really small because I don't have within my reach another piece of paper. I usually have two, and I didn't, so I wrote really note. My whole page is filled up. So today's podcast title will definitely be Life as a Team Sport. And we have on here today, everyone, again, the wicked smart Anton Anderson. And I just want to give a shout out to Giselle and his amazing 3 children. And like I said, everybody continue to throw positive vibes their way. They're growing, they're getting healthier and healthier, but it doesn't hurt to throw positive vibes, prayers, good sentiment out to them in San Diego, California. So Anton, if you don't mind, could I spend a couple of minutes with you after the podcast just to debrief?
Absolutely.
I know you're busy. All right. Well, thank you. This was an honor, Anton. I was so glad I reached out to you.
Pleasure.
I know it was a little bit
really
difficult.
Enjoyed it, Brian.
Yeah, it was great. And I've always enjoyed our conversation. This one is actually a little more special because I got to talk about you versus just business. So this was a lot more, just more special for me. So Anton, I just want to thank you for being such an amazing and inspiring guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, Bamboo Pack members, you'll hear from us again. In 1 week. In the meantime, I'm just going to ask you, please get out there, take some of what Anton said here today and hit the like button, share reviews, or rate us and review us, what you liked, what you didn't like. Send heart letters, please. We'd love to hear from more of you. We're going to put these in a collage one day, and we're going to have it. Our goal is 10,000. We're getting closer and closer every day. But more than importantly, share it with 3 people you love. This right here has life-changing effects for people. What Anton shared with us today, life-changing effect. If you love somebody, share it and say, hey, listen to these buddies talking on the phone. You might get something out of this. Please do so. Amazing stuff today. Amazing stuff with an amazing man. So everyone, till we talk next, please get out there and sculpt your life. Please, by all means, strive to be your best, man. Get in the arena. Show love and respect to others. And please, by all means, live intentionally. Until we meet next time, everyone, just know that I appreciate each and every single one of you.